Thomas the Hermit here, and I'm sitting in the living room of people who've let me watch their house over Thanksgiving while they are going to Florida to see their grandkids. And I'm going to be making several videos. I've already released the one video on the Jericho March, which happened November 4th. And I hope you get to see that video. By the way, if you like the things that I'm doing, please subscribe. Now, I'm going to talk today about sex and the lay contemplative. Now, that's kind of complicated because lay contemplatives can be married and they can also be single. Now, following the teachings of the Catholic Church is very much what we need to do. So I'm going to try to elaborate more deeply on the meaning, value, and understanding of why we should do that. Now, number one, we are really driven by sex. I know for most of my life, I've been preoccupied with sex since I was a young teenager, about the age of 13 years old. My preoccupation with woman, the beautiful form of woman, and my desire for that has been a huge preoccupation. Even up until now, it is something that I continue to struggle with. I still fail and I fall. Not nearly as much as I used to, and I'm gaining excellent control over this particular area of my life. But it can take a lifetime. I have found that the drive, the sexual drive, the desires, the desire to procreate, the desire to have children is one of the most powerful desires and drives and energies within the human person. And I will use that word energies. It is an energy that continues to push you in that direction. Now, one of the persons that helps us to understand that is Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud wrote a lot about the libido. Now, the libido, meaning the sexual drive or the sexual desire, or as he put it, the drive to continue the species. That's based upon the theories of evolution and stuff like that, which all scientists of his age prescribe to. Whether you prescribe to the theories of evolution or not, the survival of the fittest and the forwarding of the species, I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think God may have done it that way. God may not have done it that way. It doesn't really bother me. It really doesn't bother the Catholic Church either, by the way. But having said that, Freud did help us to understand that the fear of castration, the fear that a man has of castration, is greater than the fear of death. That signifies that this drive to have children is greater than life itself. So that will tell you exactly how powerful that drive towards the opposite sex or to have sex is. It is extremely powerful. Any person who's dealing with this or really dealing with it knows how powerful that drive is. It seems to occupy the number one position. By the way, it doesn't have the number one position, but I will cover that a little bit later. Now, since this is a very, very powerful drive within the human being, it is very, very hard to tame. It is a wild horse, and bridling that horse and getting it to calm down is extremely difficult. It is so difficult that you cannot oppress it or suppress it. Suppressing it or oppressing sexual desire will cause it to create other aberrations. One of those aberrations is lust. purity is achievable, not just purity in the body, but in the mind. And those people who have achieved purity do not look at sex as such a dark, lustful, destructive, negative force. They look at it as God intended, a very natural thing for bringing children into the world. Now, that sounds a little bit old fuddy-duddy, but I will defend the church's teaching upon that sex is for bringing children into the world. It was never a play toy. In fact, I know why we think it is a play toy, and shame upon people who have no depth inside of their understanding. That includes psychologists, counselors, wise men, and whatever. The reason is because the reason that there is such pleasure and joy in the sexual act is because of the belief that you are bringing or conceiving children into the world. This is the real reason why there is such pleasure there. The pleasure, a particular bodily pleasure, and a particular mind pleasure, because as we know in science that it creates an effect within the mind, releasing a lot of endorphins. And we also know that it creates other effects, but also the relief of being able to bring children into the world, which, by the way, is a very strong drive within women to have children. It's not to have sex, but to have children. And that is the true drive of the libido. Now, having said all that, why is the old-fashioned teaching the truth? Well, here's why, okay? The reason that the old-fashioned teaching is the truth is because when you violate it, you will experience a darkness within your body, physically. You will experience an iniquity, a darkening, a sickening feeling inside the body. This is what I've experienced when I have failed in my years, and in my younger years especially. In my younger years, not believing that having sex outside of marriage, I didn't believe it at all until I did it. And then that dark ugliness entered into my body. Not something I believed in, but when you violate God's will, His teaching, His truth, there is an effect. And the Bible says that he who commits a sexual sin, like fornication, defiles his own body. So when you commit a sin against God in the sexual area, it will defile your body. Conversely, when I was married for about 10 years. When I was married, there was no darkness or effect in any sort of effect when I had regular sexual relations with my wife. Now that's another part of the exhortation. A lay contemplative who is married, like it says in the Bible, should not withhold their bodies from each other. So you do not want to withhold from your spouse, your husband or your wife, when you are married. That's what chastity means when you are married, which is to share your body with your partner. For those who are not married, it means that you're not supposed to be involved in these things. Okay? Does that go as far as masturbation? Yes. Masturbation, in my own opinion, of course, is not as grave a sin as fornication or adultery, which is even worse than fornication. You know, you really want to separate yourself from God, commit adultery. That one will really push you away from God's presence. But masturbation will also push you away from God's presence. Now, what is the importance? Well, the best that my experience understands in this particular area is that we need to learn to direct this extremely powerful energy to love of God and love of neighbor. Meaning that the integration of the libido into our psyches, into the channeling of that power into love, will bring great positive goodness into the world. And the throwing away of that energy will actually weaken the good that you can do within the world. Now, integration of the sexual energies, like I said, is extremely difficult. That concludes the first part of my teachings about the lay contemplative and sex. On the second part, I'm going to talk about integrating the sexual drive into love, into the psyche, and that's what we'll cover. If you like these teachings and you want more of them, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Say a prayer for me. I'm praying for you, and I'll talk to you later.